Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, still filling in for the week. Chad will be back next week. Much-deserved vacation for him. Hey, good news. At least in the House, the $2,000 stimulus vote passed. The Senate, unlikely to bring up the vote at all. I don't think McConnell will even be voting on this. And if they do vote on this, it's not very likely that it passes. A lot of people seem to already know that. I caught a few different interviews over the last 24 hours about it, and I saw that a representative out of Illinois, Adam Kinzinger, was saying exactly that on, I think this was MSNBC, that it's probably not going to pass in the Senate. And I do have a question as we go through all this, and I'll play the audio for you in a second. But why? Why, if we're going to pass things that we know aren't going to pass, like, why waste our time? It took politicians this long, however many months, to get back to an agreement on whether or not any additional stimulus was needed and how much. And so it took so long to get a second bill. And now we're passing things for no point because the president begged for something, and Democrats love what the president asked for, although they're only listening to part of it. It's very selective hearing. It's like if you get in any sort of conversation where someone asks you for something and you say yes to the part you want to do and ignore the part you don't want to do, because the president did ask that we cut back all the pork that's in this too. But here, let's hear from Kinzinger first.
I just think we're at a moment where, everybody's in a bad position. And we're also in a moment we're about to overcome this virus with the vaccine out there. So this is the time we have to do this. Now, that said, it's probably not going to get through the Senate. Maybe not. But if it doesn't, we come back at the beginning of the year and I think have to look at where we need to fill in those gaps, especially like state and local funding issues as well.
Yeah. And what he really means by that is we wait till after the power has transferred. We wait till Biden is in charge, and then we pass some things and we get credit for them. Because that's a big part of what all this is about, which just makes absolutely no sense to me and will never make any sense to me. Government should not operate based on who gets the points. They should never operate based on what team is on, the field, essentially, when a good thing happens for the American people. If we need something as an American people, the people that we ask to represent us, the politicians, should do their job and get these sort of things done and not really care about it. And that is a big part of why there was so much of a delay, according to so many, that Nancy Pelosi did not want to see a bill any sooner than, honestly, even now. She wanted to see something that Biden could take credit for. And Biden has been talking a lot in the last 24 hours, of course. He actually talked about a lot of things, including cyber attacks, which I thought was interesting. Because if there's one guy that I really think knows nothing about cyber attacks, I think it's Joe Biden. I mean, he can be briefed on it. They can tell him things, but I don't think he totally understands it. And also, of course, we're just kind of running through the biggest headlines out there. The Georgia race is picking up more and more steam on a national scale, being talked about almost every single day because it's incredibly important. What happens in Georgia right now, whether or not the president influences it by the things he's still saying, the things he's still doing, whether or not anyone else has a big ability to change the potential outcomes here. They're both very, very close races. And I saw this, actually. Rachel Campo-Stuffy was talking about the races, and I thought she had an interesting point to make about Georgia.
And if you look at the Georgia race in particular, it's hard to believe this is Georgia, a formerly red state that's in a, Kelly Loeffler in a tight race with basically a communist. I mean, Warnock, his church invited Fidel Castro to the church and gave him a standing ovation.
Okay. So as we go down here, Raphael Warnock is someone that's going to be talked about a lot, I think, because, one, I don't know that Senate races ever get this much publicity. So people are going to look into the past of the candidates to a degree that you usually don't even get for a Senate race. And I know they do that on a local scale, but this is a national scale. This is quite a bit different. Among these things, the Daily Caller is also reporting a person who attended a church camp that was run by the Democratic Georgia Senate candidate. And it's very odd, the experience this guy had. His name is Anthony Washington. He's 30 now. He was 12 when he went to Camp Forest Out. It was a summer retreat supervised by Warnock, who at the time was a pastor for a Maryland church. According to the Free Beacon as well, I saw this in the Daily Caller, but the Free Beacon broke this story. Washington said that he was subject to abuse. He was prohibited from contacting his parents while he was at the camp, and he was humiliated multiple times, including, and I'm just speaking the words that he told the publication, urine was put on him. There's no other way to say that. He was doused with it. He was made to sleep outside. He was essentially treated horribly, and this was punishment for wetting the bed, I guess, which was something he was doing while he was in the camp at 12. I know that that's a little old for that sort of thing, but I don't think that's the right way to get someone to stop doing it as well. The counselors wouldn't let him in the house at all. They made him sleep outside. He said it was cold. He said he was out there with nothing but a basketball court. If these sort of things are true, and certainly right now it's an accusation from an individual that has been reported, it's not necessarily something where we have a lot of public proof. It says a lot about the two candidates that are running, at least in that race, and a lot about how people are going to decide who to vote for, what happens in this election, and how much it matters. Because it's not just necessarily whether or not you put in a socialist. And a lot of people are saying, and actually, you know what, I have more audio of that. The difference between candidates in the past and even Barack Obama is that if there was any sort of socialist opinions, they were hidden a little bit better. They weren't exactly put at the forefront or used as campaign slogans. And now kind of the way that all that works, the way that essentially being a okay version of a communist is out there, it's because of the squad. It's because of everything else. So they just kind of throw those opinions and they assume, I guess, that a lot of people embrace the basic idea without ever thinking about any of the logistics behind it. But I also saw that Senator Perdue was talking about the Georgia race. Let's get Senator Perdue on.
Momentum is coming our way. People realize what's at stake here. We're the last line of defense against the Democratic onslaught and this radical socialist agenda that they've aspired to in the presidential election and continue to do so now. People in Georgia are beginning to realize how serious this is, and we won't get another chance if we don't stop it now. But the other thing is what you just said. If we gain these two seats and hold these two seats in the Republican hands, we can block what these Democrats are trying to do and protect what President Trump has accomplished over the last 4 years.
And I know that some people are going to probably say, President Trump hasn't accomplished that much. I know that people on the left certainly are going to say that, but he has. Whether or not you like the guy, whether or not you like any of the things that he said or tweeted, mostly tweeted, he still has done a lot. And certainly the economy was one of the many successes of the president until coronavirus, which actually it hasn't had the impact that I think a lot of us thought it would have at this point. The economy is still doing fairly well. But as we go down those sort of conversations and those rabbit holes, we do get to an odd point, right? Because there's another thing that so many people have been afraid of the entire time we've struggled with a pandemic this year is the overstep of government. And if you put in power people in every single phase that have this sort of socialist agenda, you allow for more of those oversteps of the government. And so I know that this is really only a conversation for people in Georgia who are capable of voting on this sort of thing. But it is tremendously important, I think, to our national conversation and the New York Post article and a lot of other people who are coming out against the president right now and his conversations he's still having about the election because of a fear that it's negatively impacting the races in Georgia. So many people believe that the president motivates those who support him to vote and those who hate him to vote. That is essentially the crux of any fear in what Donald Trump, President Trump, says and does right now leading up to this vote. Is that, and he's going to go campaign, by the way. He's going to be in Georgia on the 4th. I think at like 11 a.m. It'll be live. The president will announce a pre-runoff visit to Georgia. He's very excited about that. And obviously, it's a thing that it'll be interesting to see as we go here how much of an impact his appearances have on that race or on his attempt, according to very few people now, to still get a win here. And actually, I've seen some, not many, say that they think it's still possible for the president to remain the president in a second term. It's just illogical. That is illogical. I don't know if it's actually hurting the prospects of the Georgia race or the prospects of other political figures as much as maybe some think it is. But that essentially is part of the conversation every single day. What does the president do, good or bad? Even the $2,000 push, which again, to me, it'll continue to fascinate me, the coverage on that. Because essentially the president shocked everyone by asking for more money in stimulus, something he had done for a while that everyone didn't remember he had done for a while. And it really was a fully Democratic position that upset a lot of Republicans. And yet TV, the talking heads, still hated the guy, which is always going to just dumbfound me that you can ask for something that's completely one side. Maybe it was just a test. Maybe that $2,000 thing. And some people have accused it of being a distraction for other reasons. I don't know about that. Maybe it was just President Trump testing to see if the press would ever like him. And it worked. If that is what you were trying to do, Mr. President, you proved the press will always hate you, no matter what you say. You could say free whatever. You could go full, I guess, socialist, and they would not be okay with you doing that. But anyone else, including those in Georgia running for Senate positions, apparently it's totally okay. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
Darn, that climate change. Batten down the hatches. It's Topical Storm Chad, headed your way.
It is Topical Storm, but I am Craig Collins filling in. Chad will be back after the new year. The WHO chief scientist, said that the vaccine may not prevent the spread of COVID-19. I don't know why so much of this news is being brought to the table now, although I guess it's valuable to know. But yeah, that's the latest from the WHO. They are doubting whether or not a vaccine prevents the spread. They're not doubting the efficacy of it in protecting you from serious illness. They just are curious, much like Dr. Fauci, I think last week had said in a couple different interviews, that maybe you still wear a mask, you still do all the things we've been doing, even after vaccinating, which obviously is going to probably deter some people from getting the vaccine. But hey, that's just me reporting the details to you. All right, let's shift gears to something way more important. Well, no. Okay, that's not true. Just more interesting to me. Twisted Tea is viral right now because of a video in which a man got beaten up because he used a racial slur in public. There was a guy in Ohio who used a racial slur when talking to a convenience store worker, and someone else picked up a can of Twisted Tea. If you don't know what that is, that's a product, I think, with some alcohol in it, but it's just a drink that you can buy. And somebody beat the crap out of the guy who was using racial words because it's something to me in this day and age in 2020 for you to be so publicly willing to do something like that you do it in a public place. Does it mean that you get beaten the crap out of with a can of iced tea, alcoholic iced tea? No, not necessarily. But it is the kind of thing that you might expect if you're doing something out there in the world that is so easily determined to be completely inappropriate, to be, racially motivated. A drunk guy is yelling some more. He's drunk, too, when he got beat up with a can. But anyway, the biggest reason that this story is viral, not only have 1 million people watch the video on Christmas Eve of this fight taking place, but now they're also celebrating the product Twisted Tea. A lot of people seem to be bigger fans now. Not that the brand has had anything to do with this story, but it just seems very interesting to me that because of the fame of it and just the weapon of choice being chosen here, that the popularity of the product has now skyrocketed. Certainly there's a lot of conversation to be had as to what appropriately should have happened in this situation. And again, I don't think there's anything you can say with words that actually deserves the beating that this guy took, even if it's something as easily distinguished as utterly inappropriate as the things this guy was saying. But I guess the popularity, it's interesting too, actually, as I think about this more, that this story is being celebrated on social media because, obviously someone was responding to a situation that many people would agree was bad. And yet it's sort of the exact opposite of some of the other situations we see on social media where people attack and criticize those who make decisions fairly similarly, just in different ways. And I'm not necessarily comparing this to any very serious news stories. I'm just saying that the social media reaction is not necessarily always the same. It depends on who is involved as to whether or not social media cares or not, and how much social media cares and what side of the aisle they wind up being on. Case in point is any of the times that you've seen viral stories of say, a Karen going off on a human being that didn't deserve it. Those Karens are always ridiculed and attacked for anything that they say or do, and it's usually just words, and obviously inappropriate words more times than not, and not more than that. And yet this guy got so upset with someone in public that he beat the crap out of a human, and everybody is celebrating that. So it's just the oddness in the way that social media reacts to certain things is really my main point there. I do want to move on to this story just because I think it's so interesting that in the year in which we live, and with everything else going on in the world, that a dating app like Bumble is having a very odd fight. The dating app Bumble does not allow bikini photos of people that are looking for a significant other if you're wearing a bikini indoors. If it's outside, now granted, obviously the past year has made it harder to do things like go to the beach, but if you're outdoors, it's okay. Bikini photo, completely acceptable. If you're indoors, they ban them. They don't allow them, and a lot of people have been pushing to get the bathing suit photo allowed in the indoor world, and Bumble has continued to say no. And what I find so entertaining about that is that it's a dating platform that doesn't seem to understand why dating platforms exist in the first place. I mean, social media influencers go viral and become very wealthy humans because they look attractive in bathing suits. That's just the kind of thing that happens. And so if you're on a dating profile and you want to, I don't know, I guess show off or demonstrate that you're in good shape, you probably do it via the bikini. But in the year 2020, you didn't have as many, as I said, opportunities to do that outside. And so people do it inside and people get banned. And it's not just like your account gets temporarily suspended. You get full on kicked out of the dating profile, the dating site, which I don't know if that's actually like inclusive, because Bumble has said that the reason they're doing this is to empower women. The reason that they're doing this is to fight, all those different things that society has done for so long in sexualizing women in an unfair way. And yet these are people choosing to put photos of themselves out there in the world the way that they look because they think that maybe some gentleman that they're trying to, attract or at least go on a date with might like said photo. And no, that's not okay because this is helpful to those who can't rock a bikini indoors and attract anybody. This makes no sense. This whole thing makes absolutely no sense. It's such a silly and odd thing to do. I guess it goes all the way back to 2016 when they first banned these sort of photos. And it is this year now that people are really pushing against it because, as I said, it's not as easy for people to take this photo outdoors as it used to be. Although I guess you could. If you really wanted your dating photo to be bikini specific, just go outside, take it in the backyard, go back inside. No, nothing wrong with that at all. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in. More in a bit.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. There's an odd story now circulating about a couple of teens. One teen, 18-year-old Jimmy Galligan, held on to a video of another teen that he went to high school with because in 2016, that's right, 4 years ago, she said a racial slur, I think while singing a song, according to a lot of people, just saying the lyrics to something on one of those social media platforms. I think it was on Snapchat. So 18-year-old Jimmy saved the video 4 years ago in order to get her in trouble later at some point in the future. This year, he released the video, and he caused the teen to lose her ability to go to college. She had an offer to go to school. The school catered to the pressure, I guess, or crumbled to the pressure publicly of the controversy that is this video. It's a 3-second Snapchat video of the girl saying a couple different things and using a racial slur while saying it. And again, I think that she's actually connected to the lyrics of something. But here we have a lot of different reactions throughout the last few hours, including David Webb reacting to this.
The use of language, which is something Jimmy Galligan should learn, and how it's used. It's abusive if used a certain way. It's pop culture if not. Think about the Training Day scene with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke, when he says the my N-word whole scene. It's pop culture. It's used commonly in rap music, whether you like it or not. And this is exactly what he did. He set her up. The other party, Tennessee, the university. they were wrong because they caved to the mob for something that is fundamentally wrong, and she paid a price after working hard to get on the cheerleading squad, to get into the college. There are a lot of wrongs here, and unfortunately, this is the cancel culture that gets glorified. They don't even understand what's wrong and what's right.
So I'm going to be honest about something. I don't use that word. That's not something I do. But I have noticed more and more people, white people, younger people, use the word as if it's a joke. Use the word where it ends, the N word where it ends with the A, not the hard ER, and use it as if they can kind of say it. And I know that probably there's a lot of debate as to if free speech is a thing or any of that sort of conversation. But it might be more, I don't know, of a societal thing for certain generations than it's ever been before. Maybe the prevalence of rap music, of hip hop culture in our current society. Maybe there's something to do with that. The teen, the one who held on to this story, 18-year-old Jimmy, said that he tucked the video away 4 years ago because he wanted to post it at a time that would hurt her the most and teach her the most valuable lesson. I guess to quote him, he said, I wanted to get her to get it to where she would understand the severity of that word. I guess he had complained to school administration. He has, by the way, in this story, they mentioned that he has a black mom and a white dad. But he had complained to school administration several times that many students in the school were utilizing that word, many white students, and that he felt it was inappropriate for them to do so. And that dovetails into what I just said a second ago, that I have noticed more and more people, younger generations, I don't want to say any specific people, throwing that word out on social media or anywhere else as if it's the kind of thing that they might be able to get away with now. Maybe it's been so, changed in the history of our society that everyone using it in a different way. But obviously, I don't agree with that. That's not my position on this story at all. I don't want to be canceled as well. But truthfully, I've always felt uncomfortable when anyone, even a black person, uses that word around me. And I never tell them not to. I would tell no one how to speak. But it's just, I don't know. That's how I've been conditioned by society to feel like that's a word that's not a part of my skill, not a part of my set of things that I'm going to say ever. And it's just, but it's so odd when I react to this story because Mimi Grove is the girl. She was 16, I guess, 15 years old when she did it. She had just gotten her license. She was happy about it, and she said that word to a Snapchat group that included the other boy. And the fact that he sat on it, you know what I mean? The fact that he didn't necessarily release it publicly, that it wasn't already out there, not that it matters. And also that the school did decide to rescind its offer to this girl, to Mimi, just because of this one video that exists. And it's just, when does it stop? In all honesty, like the cancel culture aspect of all this, when do we stop having that be the newest part of our society? Because first it's celebrities, and you can see several stand-up comedians make fun of cancel culture and how much it's ruining what it was to be a celebrity, because even an athlete who gets drafted high or maybe not even will have all of their Twitter investigated by many, many people. And if anything negative is out there, anything inappropriate is out there, publicized, and you may or may not lose a job. I mean, one story that actually I'm reminded of quite a bit is the one involving a movie director, the person who directed Guardians of the Galaxy, a couple very popular Marvel movies. His name is James Gunn. He had said some really terrible things on Twitter, granted at a time when most people said terrible things on Twitter, and a lot of people didn't mean them when the platform first started becoming popular. I think a lot of people used it in ways that none of us would anymore, and he lost a job. He was actually fired from a movie that was coming up. He actually wound up getting a job with another competing company, and then inevitably Disney, the company that owns the Marvel products, hired him back. So even with cancel culture, and in that case, it only took an amount of time, and everyone sort of forgot about it. But in the world of a 15, now 18-year-old kid who's trying to go to college and has one Snapchat video that was sat on for years, wind up changing that ability for her, it does seem like this is going too far. Yes, a conversation could be had about whether or not a word like that is ever appropriate for anyone, whether or not, and as David Webb puts it, some people have malicious intent behind the things they say, and some people are just mimicking the culture that they see out there in the world. They're mimicking the lyrics to songs that are played on the radio every single day. They just are reacting to what influences them at a time. I know from my generation growing up, the millennial generation, that there's a lot of music and things that influenced us that no one thinks is cool now. Like, I don't know, boy bands. Those were a thing back in the day that we liked a lot. Britney Spears was fairly valuable. And in today's society, some of the most popular people in the world of music or in the world of culture wind up being people who live that hip hop life that they speak a certain way. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm not necessarily defending the use of the word the way that David Webb did in the audio I just played a second ago. But I am saying that this twofold, there seems to be a substantial problem with how far cancel culture can go for a completely unknown human, not a famous person by any stretch of the imagination, a kid that, put a video up for her school to lose her ability to go to college and to have it covered by the New York Times is very odd, or at least to go to one specific school is a very strange extension of what has been a long-running worry, I think, for a lot of people that cancel culture it's not necessarily targeting everyone, too. As I said in my last segment, with some of the things that are celebrated on social media and some of the things that are not, it's unequal in who gets attacked by this. You know what one of the most interesting comparisons to make is, actually? YouTube celebrities are a thing. I don't like them. I know that I shouldn't, or maybe I should. I don't know. But YouTube celebrities are the newest thing. They're people who make viral video after viral video. They make millions of dollars off those videos, and they become terribly influential in the world of young people. A lot of these people have misstepped in ways well beyond the things that the court of public opinion or the social media world takes, a famous person or a person like this to task on. They've misstepped well beyond that. They've put up video after video of utterly offensive things, and they do not get corrected in the same way. They just don't. These people are I guess, famous and underground in the sense that the platform they're on is still not regulated in any way, shape, or form. And so maybe for that reason, the social media mob doesn't truly go after them to the same extent they go after people who are famous more in the mainstream, maybe because they're part of the culture. I don't know. It is a very confusing thing to see, to have play out, and to wonder what the next step would be for this teenager who probably regrets the video from 4 years ago, which is a 5-sentence or 5-word, 1-sentence video that wound up costing her an ability to do something, that obviously she probably wants to do, which is just go to school, get an education, and succeed in life. In other news, I saw this, that New York City diners are fleeing to other places to eat indoors. And honestly, this is a big part of the conversation with restaurants. Restaurants are drowning. They are struggling to a degree that almost any other company, any other industry is not. I mean, a lot of places are struggling. A lot of industries are. The movie theaters certainly are struggling. But restaurants absolutely need as much help as we can possibly provide and need the ability to have some semblance of being capable of going about their business in order to survive. And we get stories like this. We get stories of states or cities or places that shut down indoor dining, places that have rough winters that make it hard to eat outdoors. And people will just drive. They'll drive 45 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever amount of time they need. They'll drive for holidays. They'll leave. So essentially, the places that are locking down, the places that are shutting down these restaurants are not preventing the individuals who live in their states from eating indoors. They're just preventing them from giving money to the businesses that are located in their cities, in their states. That is the biggest prevention. It's not the fact that they're stopping individuals from an at-risk behavior that they're describing as at-risk. It's that all they're doing is pushing that business out the door and somewhere else. And a lot of restaurant owners are stepping up now. A lot of them are begging for reconsideration. I think that there's places in California that are now trying to connect together. They're trying to organize and continue to beg for differences in the way in which maybe some of this is going. There's another restaurant that hit its breaking point there in California after a health inspector tried to give them a citation to try to give them a fine for some of their outdoor dining violations. The guy's name is Carlos Roman. He is an owner of the Bread and Barley in California. He was issued a notice of closure by the health inspector, forcing his business to close. As video has shown online, the health inspector took photos of people dining outside and told Ramos that he had been issued that fine. This isn't about me. They can't pay their bills, he said in his video. And he meant his staff, the people that work for him. The cook just had a baby. He's with his family right now. When a restaurant wants to operate, wants to stay in business, it is to keep themselves afloat. But you have to remember, there are also a lot of individuals that work there. And so the owner of this restaurant is saying that he's operating in part because he wants to support people like the cook at his restaurant who needs money for his family and the baby they just had. So there's so many different layers to that conversation into how we vilify a restaurant owner for deciding to try to operate his business, but then we allow a different restaurant or a different establishment, different industry to operate. Or, as I said here, as news is breaking from a few different areas, if you live in one of the places where you can't eat indoors, guess what? Some people, a lot of people, will wind up traveling, depending on how far it is, I guess, to a place where they can. So you're not even preventing the behavior if this is the decision you're making in a certain state or a certain area. You're just preventing it from helping the businesses who are struggling in your own community. This is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show, where we reach across the aisle and occasionally poke someone in the eye.
My name is Craig Collins filling in. Producer Phil doing awesome jobs and finding some stories that we need to talk about. Apparently, a Harvard Medical School Department Twitter account had referred recently to people who give birth, what I think traditionally a lot of us might call women, as birthing people. And they wanted us to know, I'm trying. They wanted us to know on Twitter that not all people who give birth are women. I have a lot of questions. Some questions I can't ask on this radio show, and some that I can. And I guess we would need to have any of the individuals who came up with this from Harvard on the show. But, like, what defines it then? Like, what is, for people, I know that a lot of people will say, like, what mentally you say you are, yeah, you are. But whatever it is, I can mentally say I'm anything, and then that's what I am. No matter what's going on my body, on my human person, that doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like a lot of people that question or maybe, make fun of these sort of statements, they're not doing it to hurt anybody. It's not, malicious intent behind saying, like, come on, man, anybody that gives birth is a woman, right? They're not. Men can't. The biological version of a man can't make a baby, no matter what movies you've seen with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Mr. Mom is not a documentary. For those that are confused, you can't. It's physically impossible. I can't do it. Women, the other sex, at least according to science, last time I checked, they do it. This is the most obvious segment I've ever done in my radio life after this story. And again, thank you to Phil for sending it. It's great. On the Twitter page, they said during the webinar, a group of panelists used the term birthing person to include those who identify as non-binary or transgender, because not all who give birth are women or girls. We understand the reaction to this terminology and in no way meant for it to erase or dehumanize women, because apparently part of the reaction on social media too, by the way, is women that were upset that they were losing the hashtag birthing people as part of their gender. There's a lot of people that thought that maybe this was belittling. It's so out there, man, because, like, if we try that hard to not offend anybody, to not step on any eggshell of any kind, to walk into a room and accept everything that everyone else said, no matter how much it does or doesn't make sense to us, then we wind up in a world like this, where your ability or attempt to include actually winds up making somebody else mad. I mean, there's no end to the circle that is someone being offended. I mean, this segment right now is probably offending many a person, and I don't intend to do that. I'm not trying to say that I feel, I'm a millennial. I was born in a culture that I guess for whatever reason demanded that we try harder to be even more inclusive than anybody in a generation above us that might have handled things a little differently. And yet, when you see stuff like this, no matter what generation you are, no matter how much, I guess, you're trying, like everybody else, to be, as woke as possible in the world that is 2020, how do you go the path of birthing person? Like, how do you do that? How do you tell the doctors to start putting that on every single person's, record, that this is a birthing person, and the guy standing next to them who's freaking out because they didn't know all the things they were about to see? He's not a birthing person. He's not in the know. But I guess I can't even say he or she. I say non-birthing and birthing person. It just makes no sense. We can absolutely, here's my pitch to anyone that feels that some part of this was appropriate, some part of this was okay. We can absolutely go too far in attempting to be inclusive and attempting to help everybody feel good about who they are and not make anybody feel, as if what or who they are is not accepted. And in doing so, time and again, we see stuff like this. we have Harvard medical postgraduate panel speaking individuals. These are probably very well-educated humans trying to start the birthing people sentence, the birthing people concept, because why? I have no idea. Oh, in other news, totally different, transitioning very quickly. We got to get out of here in a second. Costco is now selling COVID-19 tests for Bermuda travel. That's right. That's a full sentence. The Bermuda Tourism Authority and the government of Bermuda recently announced that the news that they'll be touting a new first international destination to partner with Costco in order to get you the PCR saliva screening so that you can go and travel to Bermuda. You just got to pop into a Costco, grab a test, take it, and then go. It's self-administered. No way that anybody could screw that up. It retails for $140. So I guess the trip to Bermuda is already very expensive, I imagine, although, airline tickets are not what they used to be right now. This is managed by Costco Pharmacy and a health organization. After taking the test with video observation, consumers will have their ability to go ahead and travel. So, hey, not just a passport for health, just buy a test at a Costco. This is a world we all wanted to be in. I am a non-birthing person. Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson. Back in a bit.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad will be back in the new year. Bernie Sanders is probably going to filibuster. That's what people are saying. Bernie Sanders will prevent the defense bill itself from being overturned, the veto from the president, in order to try to get the Senate to acknowledge the fact that there's a $2,000 direct payment bill that's got passed by the House that the Senate needs to vote on. This is Bernie Sanders' position on things. McConnell's position yet to be determined. It'll be very interesting to see how all this plays out, how the $2,000 demand from the president plays out, because obviously Democrats jump behind the president, at least for the cause, the thing that he wants to get done. They don't praise him any more than in the past, but they at least believe in the same thing he believes in, which is that Americans need more money. Now, granted, very selective hearing. They don't really want to take anything out of the package they've already passed, the bill they've already signed, that has a lot of overspending, a lot of silly spending in it. But that is, I guess, the move so far. And a lot of people are saying that this is only a partial move because once Biden becomes the president, which will happen, I know a lot of people hope that it won't, but as of right now, there's really no legal recourse left, no way to prevent this from happening. And I actually have seen a lot of takes as far as violence might happen the day that obviously the president has been talking quite a bit about, that he still feels he has one last shot to try to get this done here. That's coming up very, very soon. If that doesn't go his way, which no one thinks it will, I guess, even I think him, a lot of people have indicated the ways in which the president and his family have demonstrated that they believe they will no longer be in office, including the pardons that are happening. Melania has been packing, which is just a silly news story in and of itself. But all that is going on, and people are fearful of violence. I hope there isn't any. I'm not fearful of it. I don't think that really makes sense. But I truly hope that there isn't a lot of rioting and a lot of violence. Although, again, I guess if we just go back a few months, media was very okay with rioting and violence, depending on the cause. If the cause is not the president and his, what a lot of people say, baseless claims as far as election fraud go, that's not okay. But other forms of rioting, looting, all that kind of stuff is totally fine if the cause makes more sense to us, the media, or maybe just American people. I don't know. Joe Biden has been speaking a lot, though, President-elect Joe Biden. One of the things he touched on recently was cybersecurity. Obviously, yet another attack on the president has involved the Russia cyber attack and the fact that President Trump has always been lenient, according to many, not me, but according to many on Russia compared to other presidents or compared to, I don't know, anybody that gets made fun of a lot for being friends with Vladimir Putin. But Biden as the next guy in line to be at the forefront of protecting us from cybersecurity. Let's hear from him first, but I don't know that makes me confident. I know he'll hire other people. I know Biden won't be sitting at a computer trying to stop a hacker, but it just doesn't make me feel the most confident about our security as a country when you have Grandpa Joe in there trying to figure it out. But here's what he said.
We have to be able to innovate, to reimagine our defenses against growing threats in new realms like cyberspace. We're still learning about the extent of the SolarWinds hack and the vulnerabilities that have been exposed. As I said last week, this attack constitutes a grave risk to our national security. We need to close the gap between where our capabilities are now and where they need to be to better deter, detect, disrupt, and respond to those sorts of intrusions in the future.
Look, I know, again, that the people in charge don't actually do things. They do some things, but they hire other people, good people, to look into all the stuff they don't understand. But I have to imagine that Joe Biden understands very little of this. I mean, it's been a joke that other Democrats, Hillary Clinton among them, didn't really understand computers, and that's why her emails were so messed up, which is a silly joke and not a joke that I believe in. But come on, out of all the people that have ever served in that office, the office of President of the United States, the guy that's least likely to comprehend any version of what a cybersecurity expert is telling them, Joe Biden. There's no way that he gets it. And I love the fact that he's saying we got to, innovate. We got to move on. I feel like this is what people accused Steve Jobs of going into a room with a bunch of experts and asking them for something that none of them thought was possible and telling them to get it done and still not understanding any of the parts of it. Because a lot of people said that Steve Jobs was the innovator in just the idea, not necessarily any of the execution. He wasn't a programmer like a lot of the people who worked for him at Apple. That would be Joe in this situation. And it doesn't, I don't think, bode well. And actually, the attacks on Joe Biden have started to increase. And I wonder, I know this is conspiracy theory. I know I should put my tinfoil hat on. But I wonder if this is all just part of the plan. To be honest, I know a lot of people have said that, and I've dismissed it from time to time. But as attacks start to ramp up on Hunter, on the family, on everything that is the Biden name, you start to wonder if maybe this is stuff, because it would be very easy early on in any sort of planning to be very aware of the fact that this was going to be an attack, and honestly, even the way in which the media handled it in waiting till after the election for the most part to really discuss it in detail. But here, this is Lisa Booth on Biden and the prolific liar that he's been.
Well, I think the irony here is that people like Jake Tapper and many of the liberals that work in the media have protected the most prolific liar in American political history, which is Joe Biden. I mean, if you look at Joe Biden's history, he lies about everything. He's a plagiarist. He lied about his family coming from coal miners. He lied about receiving the NAACP's endorsement, even though they don't endorse. He's lied about things like graduating in the top of his law school. He's lied about everything, yet the media didn't vet him. They protected him and his son's lies and his business dealings from that information getting out to the American people. And I think the entire reason why the media hates President Trump so much is he doesn't buy into their BS narratives that they push.
It's very interesting as far as the conversations go, because Joe Biden, for the most part, has been hidden, and he's been hidden because of coronavirus. He's been hidden because of all these things during the campaign. He wasn't really challenged the way that other public people are challenged because of the nuance that was 2020. And obviously, so many people who voted for him, as you've heard time and again on this show and any other, really just voted against President Trump. As we learn more about Joe Biden, the Biden family, not just necessarily his son, his brother, other people who might make these odd business dealings or benefit from the positions that he wields, or even just the fact that those people are all still people, because if none of them get caught for what they've done before, it's like anybody else, anyone in your life. If you break a rule and you don't actually get in trouble for it, odds of you breaking it again go up. No matter what happens, Hunter Biden is all over the news, although actually he really wasn't for a while, and now he barely is. And so the odds of this happening again early on in the presidency of one Joe Biden are probably tremendously high. Can you envision that? Can you envision the Russiagate version of trying to impeach the president over some of the business dealings that happened within the first few months, maybe first year of his administration? I don't know that we'll get that, but I think that there's a lot of people that might push for those sorts of things, a lot of people that might ask for that kind of thing. And it'll just be interesting to see if this was all part of the plan to begin with. A lot of people have said that whoever ran as the VP with Biden was the true Democratic candidate, because a lot of Democrats wanted to see Biden, for one reason or another, health, whatever, step aside early on in his presidency to hand the presidency to someone else. And in this case, Kamala Harris would be the victor, the recipient of said. And I don't even know if that's truly what I guess a lot of people have asked for as well. If we get a female president that way, as opposed to winning an election, is that different? I ask you. I'm not going to answer that question because I'm fearful of what my answer would be. No, I mean, come on. It's obviously different, but is that the same success as if someone had just run? I don't know. But as we continue to see the attacks ramp up and the conversations be had about the things in Biden's past, or the curiosities with Biden's family, it makes me wonder more and more. All right, let's shift gears to a rapper named Lil Pump. I don't know if you know who Lil Pump is. It's a rapper. He had an issue with a mask, a face mask, while he was on a JetBlue flight. He actually refused to wear the face mask. Lil Pump didn't seem to think. He's a 20-year-old hip-hop star, by the way, and I just love saying his name because it doesn't matter how much I agree or disagree with the guy. When Lil Pump is the one trying to make a point, yeah, I don't know. You wonder if maybe he should have gone with a tad more serious version of a name in order to do that. His real name is Gazi Garcia, by the way, but he was boarding a JetBlue flight on Sunday. The crew asked him to put on a mask. He said no. He said that they became verbally abusive to him. They said that he was just being obviously difficult to deal with, so they kicked him off the flight, and now he's been banned from any JetBlue flight in the future. So that's right. If you're a big fan of Lil Pump, you can't fly JetBlue anymore. You got to stick with your boy and make sure that you go. I love the guy's name. I'm sorry. I don't know. He's 20 years old. He's a hip hop star, so he's probably very well known. Lil Pump is not the kind of music I listen to often. I couldn't even tell anybody that with a straight face, by the way. I don't care how good the music is. If I'm listening to something and a buddy of mine is like, oh, man, what's that? Because neither of us have ever heard of the guy. I'm like, oh, this is a new Lil Pump track. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have a friend anymore. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. Greg Collins filling in. More in a bit.
To be free. I am not a terrorist. I am not Antifa. I am not a sex slave that wears masks.
Don't be a cutie pie.
Probably sit around and cook some soups and eat bread and desserts and just get all fat and sassy.
You're running my life, man!
Yeah, you haven't seen anything yet.
You're listening to The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I saw this story and couldn't help but be captivated by it, which I guess is the whole point of it. I am an adopter of smart technology. I know a lot of people out there listening would be like, you're an idiot. You're getting spied on. Bad things are happening. I know. I guess I accept it. Bezos knows a lot about me that I wish he didn't know. But I can turn my lights on with my voice and open my door by just walking up to it. And these are things that I like. There's a new, I guess, feature for the Alexa devices, and I apologize for any that I just set off in your home by saying that, that'll hypnotize you. Kelly Cutler is the name of someone who was a deep skeptic of the idea of being hypnotized by a digital product. She talked about this. She's Stanford University last year. A new digital hypnosis program was unveiled. I was thinking it was nonsense and was never going to work, she said. She's 44, and she had smoked for 25 years. But after her first session with the smart device and its ability to do these sorts of things, she has seen tremendous success. She said her cravings are totally gone. She can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense. The hypnosis is some crazy, she uses some other words, voodoo, and it's all good. It's in a great way. It's no longer considered a crazy medical treatment in general, doctors say. Many patients, like Miss Cutler, believe that they've seen value in being hypnotized by a medical professional and having it go that way. But now, potentially at some point in the future, they're going to roll out part of the feature on the device, the Alexa, the smart home device that's already spying on you. It's going to be capable of hypnotizing you. As I say that sentence, I imagine most of you can immediately see the problem. As I say the words out loud, that successfully hypnotize you is something that are smart. Like, when does the robot uprising actually happen? You know, like the minute that they are in full control of everything I do, everything I say. Last night, actually, I was throwing up a new time. I actually wake up earlier to be a part of this show than some other times I wake up during the day. I don't want to talk about that too much because I know, depending on when you're listening to this, You might think that that's crazy, but I do. And so I was telling my device to set my alarm earlier. And it said, I noticed you're going to sleep earlier. It said it to me. It goes, would you like me to play some soothing music for you as you fade off into the sunset? And I was like, sure, go ahead. The music wasn't that soothing, spoiler alert, but it was odd that it so quickly identified the fact that my daily routine had changed a little bit. It's like, we noticed some things are different. So here, let's help you out. And just to think, if it could then like flip on the hypnotize switch and I could be turned into a drone for Bezos, I mean, all of a sudden you'd have so many people working at the stores, I can't even think of the word right now, but the factories. They'll be shipping boxes, doing whatever Bezos needs them to do. That would be surreal. So I do kind of hope, I totally hope that we go away from the hypnotize approach. And even if you have it for a good reason, even if the excuse is it's going to help people do things like kick smoking, guess what? As far as anybody's willingness to abuse some sort of power they're given, I would put Bezos at the top of any list. I think he is a movie villain of our time in a lot of ways. Speaking of actually superheroes, though, I saw that Wonder Woman crushed the box office. If we're looking at box office numbers per this year, if we're looking at COVID box office numbers, Wonder Woman gained $16.7 million. Obviously nowhere near the hundreds of millions that usually movies like that can bring in on an opening weekend. This is here in the States, 36.1 million globally. This is considered a very big success in the time of coronavirus for the movie. Granted, a lot of the reviews said it was terrible. And the only thing I really reacted to the story by thinking is how upset would you be if you didn't like the movie? If you went out, if you're one of the people who chose to go out, even if you rented out a theater, which I think my producer Phil was telling me yesterday, it's like $90 at some AMCs or $100 to rent out an entire theater and see a movie, which is awesome. But if you did all that and then the movie was not the best, I'm sure that would really be fairly devastating compared to a typical bad movie experience. So I guess there's more pressure now than ever on Hollywood to do a good job. Because if I did this on a one-off and it was a bad experience because the movie wasn't that great, I certainly wouldn't do it again. But it's interesting to see that at least as far as this year goes, that movie was as successful as it gets. And 16 million, by the way, compared to like 100, 200, 300 million, which we have seen for Marvel movies and stuff. That's obviously a very disappointing total if you're looking at it on a regular year. But hey, at least some people are still going to movie theaters and maybe also trying to go to restaurants. I saw this story and mentioned it the other day in California. A Beverly Hills restaurant has to apologize for their discreet New Year's Eve plans. They claimed invitations for their New Year's Eve party were misinterpreted by the public. The restaurant said that they had caught heat for a discreet indoor dining experience that they were sending around invitations for during a time when LA has banned those sort of things. They're now claiming the invitation was mishandled by the person that wrote it, but also misinterpreted by anyone who was offended. That's the best excuse, by the way. Like, this invitation you found? We didn't write that. This one guy did. He works here, but now he's fired. He did a bad job. In a year like this, it's not like you're sending out invitations every day for things. It's not like this is the kind of thing, that got lost in the process, the big process. It's the only thing that you're probably doing on an indoor level. It makes no sense, the defense. We're considering taking reservations for New Year's Eve dinner inside, read the invitation. If this is something you'd like and you'd be interested in, please contact us at your earliest convenience. That's a fairly desperate, and honestly, it's sad as I read through this because the restaurants so desperately need any and all business that they're doing things like this, getting caught, being criticized for it publicly and in trouble for it legally, potentially. And then they have to go out and say, no, that's not our intention. We didn't mean it. And that one person wrote it wrong. With the dining ban set to expire on the 28th, we are hopeful of resuming some sort of table service, and we are considering taking reservations on New Year's Eve as part of the invitation as well. Good luck to them. I feel bad all around. Chad Benson Show. Greg Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I get confused every so often when people can't support the idea of finding out the truth. To be honest, when the president first started to accuse the election process of being fraudulent and wanted to challenge it in the court system, the fact that so many people were just angry about the idea itself made no sense to me. Whether or not it had validity is something that we're supposed to figure out, right? That's something we're supposed to go through the process, and challenging something in the court system is it's American right. Everybody can do that. Obviously, as we went and as we know so far, there hasn't been a lot of proof provided, so it does seem that that's inaccurate as far as a position to be had, but who knows? This is also another example of that. Mary Franson, a rep out of Minnesota, has asked for an audit on COVID deaths because she believes, and she points out a couple examples, that they're exaggerated in Minnesota. She thinks they're exaggerated throughout the country, and she'd like an audit. And people are upset, I saw all over the place, that she'd even ask for something like this. But again, asking for the truth is not with the intent of proving something that isn't true. I want to try to say that as many times as I can, as clearly as I can. If I ask for you to investigate something, and I ask you to tell me what the truth is, you going and looking for the truth shouldn't make me right if I'm lying. And we've seen that with the president as well, by the way. Not that I think he's lying, but if the truth isn't what you believe it to be, that the system itself will play out in a way to tell us that you're wrong. And then Mary would have to say, okay, fine. We did an audit. We found out that a lot of the cases were accurately described as COVID deaths. But here's what she said this morning.
And in Colorado, it has been reported that at least 2 cases of gunshot victims were being classified as COVID-19 deaths. And that is why we are calling for a full audit. And President Trump, if you are watching Fox and Friends this morning, I am asking you to request a full audit of every single state in the nation, because Minnesota is not an anomaly. The citizens of our country are being led in fear, and that fear is leading them to make irrational decisions based on the governors with their shutdowns, with us not being able to exercise our life, our liberty, our pursuit of happiness. And so we need this audit. We need the truth, and the public deserves the truth.
Coronavirus didn't take our money. The actual disease itself didn't take the money from so many Americans, jobs from so many Americans. The reaction to COVID-19, the reaction to the seriousness and the outbreak and everything else going on has always been the reason why, and everyone knows this, our economy has struggled, why we need things like stimulus packages that include more than $600 for every American so that people can go about their lives in a way that makes sense to them in a year that's been so tremendously difficult. If we find out more and more information, and it'll always be a 20-20%. We'll always, wow, that's such a weird thing to say with this year being what it was. But we'll look back on this year maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, with very different understanding of things. I've said all along since the early part of this year when we first had a pandemic, first had shutdowns and everything else, that we don't truly understand the medicine and the medical aspects of the disease itself the way we will in the future. That's not saying we shouldn't do what we were doing, although at times it felt like we really shouldn't, and certainly allow Americans to make their own decisions made a lot of sense to a lot of people. But in the moment when you're reacting to all the different information you have, you don't have a complete set of details. You have the beginnings of the research, the beginning of the understanding. I mean, there's talk now of a new strand of coronavirus that popped up in Nigeria. It's popping up in the UK. It's making a lot of people very worried about if it's more infectious than other ones. We don't know the true information. We don't know all the details, and we won't for some time in the future. And if we have, and whether we're doing this because hospitals wanted to get paid for the medical treatment they were giving people, or what the reason could be, if we have an exaggeration of cases on a national scale, because obviously every day if you pop up any bit of reporting, the U.S. sadly is leading the way in coronavirus cases and coronavirus death. When we see all that information, if we find out that someone who died of a gunshot wound was listed as a COVID-19 death, that's confusing. That deserves the truth. And what I'm saying right now is not necessarily a proof of something. I want to be crystal clear, as I just was a second ago, in saying what the intent is behind the request for something like an audit, or what the intent is for any of this. It's not because my doubt proves anything. Your doubt and my doubt sadly prove nothing. What we need is actual hard, concrete evidence that something is going on. And things like audits, things like legal challenges get to the heart of the truth in a situation. And anyone who opposes it, anyone who says, let's not look into that, let's not research that, those people start to feel the most dictatory to me, the most authoritarian. These are people that seem to believe that finding answers and finding truth somehow in and of itself is bad and or offensive. Anyone that got upset at the many, many legal challenges the Trump administration brought as far as the election goes, that doesn't make sense, because the outcome of those challenges, the outcome of those lawsuits proved what you were saying, if you're someone that was being upset by it, that there has been no proof of voter fraud to the degree needed to overturn the election. We have not seen it. But being allowed to go through that legal process, that's okay. And honestly, the president still having the opinion he does is not necessarily shocking. And I don't think it's a tearing down of our democracy. The same holds true for anyone you know. And look, you can be on either side of this conversation, by the way. I know that people who listen, depending on where you are, depending on how bad the outbreak is in your area, places like California are seeing horrible outbreaks right now. So I'm sure a lot of people, they like jerk their head to this sort of conversation. Like, no, we don't doubt those results. The coronavirus is very deadly, and we all need to treat it with the utmost respect and the utmost, whatever. And yeah, that's true. If we look into details, though, and you find out in your own community that the exaggeration is 20, 30, 40, 50% of the cases, not necessarily what you thought they were, it might change your perspective. It might allow businesses to operate. It might allow money to get back into our hands, so we don't need things like stimulus checks to survive. And it's not necessarily something I'm saying that I have, more detail than you on, so I'm not saying what the answer to the question is. I'm just saying that asking the question is not in and of itself wrong. And when a representative goes on television and implores the president to do audits to look into more of this information and then gets ridiculed on social media for doing it, we misunderstand the conversation we're all trying to have. I know she has an opinion. I know she believes that the audit will prove her position. But guess what? The audit doesn't care. Science doesn't care what our opinions are. Investigations aren't supposed to care. Sometimes they do. What our opinions are. I mean, case in point is also the Russia investigation. That was a joke. And people found out it was a joke when it happened. And does it annoy people like the president of the United States for having to go through that process? Of course it does. If you were accused of something that you didn't do, you'd be as mad as anybody else. But after the entire investigation takes place and after you get acquitted and then brag about it, which you deserve, you get the right to do, I guess that means that the system worked. The only fear in any of this for anyone would be if the system doesn't work. That's the big fear, is that if we did an audit or if we dive into this or that piece of information and the system fails us, and I know that that's also possible, but just it makes me so confused. And again, it's the same kind of like, pick and choose which fights make sense to us and which fights don't. Because if the president asks for $2,000 added to the check to each American, that's something that inherently Democrats and people on the left love. The media loves. Everybody's down for it. There were report after report after the bill passed, the bill that we actually got, that $600 wasn't enough money. And that was all over, everywhere. Everyone was saying $600 wasn't enough money as far as talking heads go. I'm not saying that American people all agreed to the same thing, but talking heads certainly were in consensus on that point. Then the president says he's not going to sign the bill for a bit because he wants more money. And then everybody thought he was a jerk again. I mean, truthfully, it makes no sense. None of this does. And certainly when you react to someone like Mary Franson saying that she wants to investigate the amount of deaths and whether or not they're all tied to COVID or if there are exaggerations, hospital exaggerations, what have you, for all different kinds of reasons. I've seen medical professionals pop on television after stuff like this happens and be offended. Be like, how dare you question any medical professional in this field for any chance that we would ever lie about it. Disgusting. And then at the same time, the medical professionals for the president give a press conference where they talk about his health and everyone blasts it. They're like, these medical professionals are liars. It makes no sense to me that you can be like, no, medical professionals don't lie. Well, the ones who treated the president are full of crap. They're the only ones. Don't worry about the rest of them, though. They would never exaggerate anything. Getting the truth is the number one right of our country. It's what journalism was founded on. It's what so many things are supposed to be, dedicated to, is that the truth matters more than anybody else's opinion. And so I think I will die on that hill. that if someone asks for an audit of stats, of data, or anything, if the next president who decides to go to the court system because they feel like that election was rigged, if Hillary Clinton brought up some court cases from 2016, because she does, as I mentioned again and again, still think 2016 was a sham of an election, I will support her right to do it. I don't think she'll win, but I'll support her right to do it. I support you, Mary. I hope the president was listening and watching Fox News. He happens to watch a lot, although not recently. I think he's been switching to Newsmax, so maybe not. But just finding the truth has never, ever been wrong, and we all need to pull back and stop anyone in media who attacks individuals like that for going on television and asking those questions, because she's not saying matter-of-factly that for sure every single case or a large amount of cases are exaggerated. She's just asking for the truth, and we as Americans need to support it. Chad Benson Show, Craig Collins filling in.
Serving up talk radio medium rare and dripping with irony. It's Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I'm happy about this news. Paul McCartney has a #1 album. He's got a #1 for the first time in 31 years. McCartney 3 debuted at #1. The numbers were confirmed by Buzz Angle on Friday of last week. The morning Billboard announced they'd give the #1 album on their next chart to Paul. He said that his Egyptian Station hit was #1 in 2018, but it was sold as part of a bundle with tour tickets, so that didn't count, I guess, to the same extent that this does. It's just there's no tour tickets. It's 2020. Sir Paul danced a little jig on social media to celebrate the fact that he was #1. Let's hear a little bit from Sir Paul.
Walk towards the light. I'm open round the clock. I don't get lost at night. Nothing used to be afraid of days like these. But now you're overwhelmed by your anxieties.
It is cool to see this guy still making music and doing it at a time in 2020. Actually, that video, Find My Way, is one I'll put up on my social media page, and you should probably check out on your own, because it's him just doing everything at home. I think that he made this track, probably a lot of the music like everybody else. Taylor Swift very much celebrated for her ability to make music during coronavirus. Sir Paul was also doing that. Can we get the same army behind him? It is just very, very cool to see a #1 song for Paul McCartney, a #1 album for the guy, McCartney 3, as I said. And the fact that, I saw the Rolling Stones in Chicago, yes, when it was still a thing. And it made me so happy in my soul. I can't even describe to you how happy I was. And I actually saw some coverage of other people, music writers and people that were worried going into the concert that maybe that would somehow tarnish the legacy of the individuals, of the very, very famous Rolling Stones, if they don't hold up to some version of standard of performance that over the years people had come to expect for groups like that. And bah humbug, I say to those individuals. It is excellent to see people out there and performing and doing and making music and just being a part of so many valuable things. You know what it also reminds me of? And this is totally shifting gears. It's not necessarily on the same scale as Paul McCartney and or the Rolling Stones. But Ozzy Osbourne was in a Post Malone video, and everybody on social media was praising Post Malone for discovering an old guy named Ozzy Osbourne. And I think that's a tremendous problem, and we need to fix it. We need to correct it. So the more classical music stars or rock music or what have you stars that can get out there and make something new and get the kids to listen again just makes me happy. It's one of the better stories, in my opinion, of this entire year. And in other news, certainly not as great of a story. Current musician, current popular culture human, Cardi B, who's written a song that if I read the lyrics to, I'll be made fun of somehow, even though the lyrics to that song are crazy. And if, I've seen other people that get ridiculed for it, so I'm not going to go down that road. But she's now having a, tongue-in-cheek fight on social media with Peppa Pig. That's Paul McCartney making songs in his basement, hitting #1 on the album, being just an awesome, awesome dude. Cardi B, Twitter feud with Peppa Pig. I guess she's upset that her toddler, who loves Peppa Pig, splashes around in puddles and splashes her fancy Uggs that the 28-year-old rapper bought her toddler. These ruin the shoes. And so Cardi's upset about that. She uses a lot of expletives in her tweets at Peppa Pig. And I think she's joking. I don't want to take this too seriously. But begging her to stop glorifying stomping in puddles because it's ruining the shoes of her toddler. I mean, come on. in all seriousness, there is no need of a Peppa Pig to encourage a child to jump in a puddle. And the big problem here, the big mistake you've made, young Cardi B, is that you bought your child expensive shoes. This should never happen. I don't care what level of money you make or what level of income you reach in this society. You should never buy fancy shoe products for toddlers. They are going to ruin them. This is a guaranteed thing. It makes no sense to me, and it does demonstrate so profoundly the difference between the old and the new generation. And I know that Cardi, again, is trying to be funny. I'm sure a lot of people see it as humorous, and I'm not truly criticizing her feud with Peppa Pig. I'm just saying that Sir Paul was making music and creating a #1 album during the coronavirus, and you are getting upset that your child has messy shoe wear. And that just, to me, makes absolutely no sense. And I don't know that you could ever have it make sense to me. All right. I also saw that New Year's Eve in New York City is still a thing. But you got to have a lot of money. You got to have Cardi B money in order to get to the parties and the things that might be, closed door or might be exceedingly rare. Hot restaurants are creating DIY meal prep kits that you can buy for fairly expensive pricing. It looks like some of the lower ends are about $200 a guest in order to pick up some of these things, in order to get some of these things for what you're not supposed to have a big party at home. So I guess it would be your party of one. But they do exist, and they are out there in the world. And if you have an interest in going down the hole of being a part of New Year's Eve in New York, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody's ever been before, but the Times Square thing in New York City, it's probably not so bad that we're going to get a year reprieve from that. Because that's a mess. There's some fun and a lot of mess that goes on in that sort of world. So truthfully, there are a lot of ways in which it's not necessarily the most valuable of experiences. But you got to do it once. I guess anybody, especially if you're on the East Coast, you got to try it out once. A restaurant owner by the name of Spirit Whisperer, this is Miss Melissa Brooke, has created 4 cocktails that she's going to pair with different dishes for any party goers. And you can pick up the package of those items from her. Look, I've been talking about restaurants on and off throughout the show today because I think they desperately need help and they need to survive. I'm not sure if this is the exact look, but I guess in a place like New York City where you have so many top shelf and high-end establishments, maybe it's the only place you can pull it off. I mean, locally, any of the restaurants, if you live places other than that city, you probably don't want the $200 to $2,000 box kit for your holiday. You probably want an item a little bit more reasonably priced when you go out the door. And actually, I did see one other story, and I think I have to tease it. I don't think I can do it in great detail here. But there was a restaurant owner that got in trouble out of Pennsylvania for the signs he was putting up on the highway outside of his establishment. One of them got stolen and accused of being xenophobic because it essentially referenced the fact that he was to-go only, and he blamed China. But I'll get into that in more detail. The sign of a restaurant owner is too much for some people. Chad Benson Show, Craig Collins filling in.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I can't help but talk a little bit about the Nashville bomber as more and more information has come out about this man, 63-year-old Anthony Quinn Warner, who died in the explosion. The only loss of life, 3 other people were injured in the explosion as far as we know. This happened in Nashville on Christmas. A lot of details have emerged, not necessarily as far as motive is concerned. There are some things that seem to reference that he thought he would be hailed as a hero for whatever it is, the reason why he did some of the things he did, but also the actions he took late in his life over about the last month of his life indicated that he had no intention of surviving this blast, that he very much intended to take his own life when he blew up an RV in a parking structure in Nashville. He actually also blared, there's now additional proof of this, and I know I referenced it yesterday, blared a warning out of that RV before detonating the explosion, telling people to get away. There's even cop footage, video footage of a couple officers in the area that hears the warning and then the explosion, and then the officers start to try to help people that are in the area. So it's very interesting to me that not only did this man sell his home, a longtime home that he owned in the suburban area of Nashville, to a California woman for nothing. He transferred ownership of the home to that person for nothing. He gave away his car to someone else claiming to have cancer. He gave someone his car. He's like, I have cancer. I'm going to not be here soon. I need to give away this car to you for nothing. He left no clear digital footprint, according to a lot of the information we've gained so far. No other obvious clues to explain why he set off the explosion in the parked RV, why he played the message to warn people, obviously in an attempt not to injure many, when also detonating an explosion in an area where there are going to be a lot of people. It's very confusing. My first reaction, as I continue to read through and gauge this full story and understand it, is not necessarily one that I'm coming to in the case of Anthony Quinn Warner. I don't know, like many, a lot of the details still missing in this story to say for sure that this connection makes sense. But I can't help but draw it. And I wonder if you feel the same way. We have talked all year, from when closings, lockdowns, everything started, about mental health. That's been a conversation. I know that Chad's talked about it before and even done interviews, great interviews with individuals about mental health and a lot of the struggles for everyday Americans dealing with a lot of the challenges that have existed in this specific year. Now, granted, is Anthony Warner an example of that, or was this a person that was already destined to go down the path he went down this year to do what he did on Christmas Day? I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know the person. Investigators are saying that the best way for them to gauge a better understanding of motive of why this would happen is to talk to the person who perpetrated the crime. Obviously, that's impossible in this situation. Analyzing his belongings, collecting all different kinds of things through the investigation, portable drives, computers, has continued to really evade police as far as any true motive comes across. But look, as I said, all year, the conversation has been by some that none of that matters. That mental health, none of these things are tied to the decision-making that we have to make as politicians, as power people. We have to go the road we go. We have to close businesses. We have to do all these different challenging things, and we have to look into cameras. And my favorite is actually J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. This guy is ridiculously wealthy and making decisions to shut down Illinois and then looking into cameras, as many Democrats do, and saying that he gets the pain he's causing. You don't get the pain you're causing at all. You've never had a day of your life have struggled the way that you're causing for business owners, small business owners, individuals who lose their jobs, any of that. You just don't get it. And to say that you do is actually almost offensive. And I know I'm not trying to be extra woke and all those things in 2020, but to look into a camera and say, I get the pain that I just caused by making so many people incapable of making a living, you just don't. And as we continue to discuss all the different fallouts from the year that we've all had, thank God it's ending in just a few days. Thank God it is over in 3, 4, I don't even remember how many days right now. I'm playing 2 days. Thank God that this is the end of everything and we get back to hopefully normalcy within the next year that is 2021. I know it won't be right away, but I know it will happen. It's just crazy to me to read this story, read every description of how this individual, when you first heard it, depending on when you heard it, I guess, that there was a bomb that went off in Nashville on Christmas, your heart immediately drops because you can't fathom the amount of families that would be impacted by the loss of life of a terrorist attack or some kind of attack, a crazy person, like a mass shooting taking place. And then as you find out more and more details over the last few days of what he did to mitigate the damage in a way, I know that he still destroyed buildings and still harmed people. I know that it wasn't, a person who just hurt themselves and no one else. And I don't know the exact reason for all of it. This screams of mental illness. This gave up everything you own, give up your car, give up your house, give up all your possessions and roll out to an area that's public so that, your death is covered. Obviously, if you had done something in private, it's not talked about on a national scale. So this is the way to have a public version of this. And I don't know. I don't know what the end result or the rest of the conversation is, but I can't help but tie it to the conversation we've been having, the curiosity that so many Americans have as to the true impact, the true profound changes that take place for our society, for individuals. I mean, there are all kinds of conversations about domestic violence and other things that were an uptick during quarantine, during coronavirus, during everything else. And can you blame one for the other? No. You can't say necessarily that it is the fault of those who shut down some cities, shut down economies for things like this. As I said, I don't have any real information as to whether or not this one story, this high-profile story, has any connection to the challenges of the year that is 2020. At the same time, I can't truly doubt that it can't somehow be connected. And honestly, when you do look into this, is I guess my only point as I get up on the soapbox and rant it again. Today it's a rant-heavy day. But as I do it again, I beg anyone, any Nancy Pelosi, any human being that looks into a camera over the next few days, few weeks, few months, and tells the American people they get the hardship that they just caused, if they cause any more hardships, and even if we don't wind up getting stimulus that makes sense or other things that make sense, I hope when they look into the camera, they think for an extra second about stories like this and the potential for them to be tied to the decisions that have been made throughout the year. Just the potential, not even necessarily the reality, the guaranteed conclusion, just the concept itself that people may hurt themselves, may hurt others, may struggle a lot in a year when so many of our wounds have been self-inflicted. Certainly China has played a huge part. And actually, okay, let me get to that. I talked about this a little bit ago, but didn't get the full details for you, so let's get to them now. There is a restaurant owner in Pennsylvania who's been putting signs up on the highway encouraging people to know that he's still in operation to some degree. For the most part, it's been takeout only, like so many restaurants throughout the country. But he wanted the attention of people to go to his restaurant, to still make a living, to still do his thing. As I just said, something that's vitally important to all of us. And one of his signs got stolen. The reason it got stolen is because I guess someone somewhere felt it was xenophobic and wrong, and there were several reports online about people being offended by it. The sign simply said, "We are to go only, blame China." That's what the sign said. We are to go only. You got to blame China for that because coronavirus. And we've had report after report recently from very reputable sources, AP and what have you, about the ways in which China did not tell the truth. They hid the amount of cases that were existing in their country. They hid a lot of the information. They didn't tell the truth. I'm not being xenophobic when I say that. When I say that coronavirus started in China, and when I say that their government wasn't forthcoming in a lot of the details of coronavirus, I'm saying facts out loud into a radio station that you're now hearing. I'm not saying lies. I'm not saying things that are created by any sort of bias or any sort of, racial problems I have in my heart. I'm telling you a true statement. So this guy puts up the sign to go only, blame China, taken down, ridiculed, racist, complaints about his hip hop bar now all over social media, all over the internet. And he's just defended himself. He's like, this is not racist. It's ridiculous that people are upset by this, offended by this, and taking down his advertisements for his restaurant because it's just simply a fact. Their government misconstrued a bunch of details that would have helped every other country. And honestly, I had this conversation with my Marine uncle, Uncle John. He actually begged me as I fill in this week to do this topic in more detail. So maybe we will. I think I can get a writer on to talk about it in more detail. The ways in which China is not being held accountable for the things they did to make the response to COVID-19 more difficult for everyone else. There's a lot of lies, a lot of different decisions. Even now, a jailed journalist who's gone to prison for 4 years for reporting on the COVID-19 situation in China, that person has been sent to prison, and yet someone still steals a sign from the highway and says it's xenophobic to blame China. And I think I've actually seen a few comedians with this take, and I love the comedian take for whatever reason, that you're not even like against people who live in China, people from China, Chinese people who are in the United States and somehow connected to that country's heritage or what have you. When you say blame China for coronavirus in any way, shape, or form, you're talking about their government. You're talking about the power structure that exists in a specific country. You're not saying, no one I've ever heard says blame Chinese people for corona, because that would be utterly racist and wrong. No one's saying that. That maybe the add-on here, and my only recommendation to Johnny Compton III, who is the restaurant owner with this sign in Pennsylvania, is blame the Chinese government as the add-on to his post. Not that he has to make it, but maybe if he does, people lay off. Because truthfully, he is absolutely right when he says all he's talking about are facts, and he also wants people to buy his things so that he's still in business. This is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
I can't take it anymore!
Well, get over it. It's time to forge a new path with your very own political cartographer, Chad.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I wonder, for a lot of people, since this year has been very unique, we've spent a lot of time alone, a lot of time at home, maybe not around very many people. If you talk to yourself in third person more than you used to in the past, if you've noticed having conversations, because maybe you missed them, maybe you're not being as social as you were, if that is something that's become more prevalent at all, good news. If you have done that, outside of the fact that maybe some loved ones around you think you're nuts and might even be annoyed, honestly, it's quite good for you. New research suggests that giving yourself distanced self-talk, this would be third-person conversations, even within your own brain, even in silence or out loud, which is the way that I like to do it as a radio broadcaster. Can't keep any of my thoughts in my mind. They all got to come out of this mouth. A recent study by the Clinical Psychological Science, I guess this was published in that magazine, found that a robust body of work exists from the University of Michigan, a professor there by the name of Ethan Cross, a few other instructors or a few other professors involved in this study, cements findings from years past that distance from yourself is a great psychological phenomenon that can help you better regulate your emotions, self-control, even provide enhanced wisdom in some situations. If you look at everything through the cone of you, every situation you're ever in, every argument or anything that you've ever had, every difficult challenge that comes up. In this case, they talk about it as negative emotions. If you're in the feels, the way that the young kids would say it, if you're just stuck all the time in that world, talk to yourself like you're not you, which sounds insane. As I read through this again, and I know that I do it. I know that I talk in third person to myself, and maybe a lot of us do, but it provides that extended, that different layer of analysts. It's almost like, how you can always tell when a friend is making a mistake? You can't always do it in your own life, but when your friend goes through a story and you notice the fatal flaw in the decision making of their last day or whatever it is that's going on, it's so easy to pinpoint and be like, oh yeah, no, you shouldn't have done that. You should do that better. Or even, and this is true for me all the time now as a married man, if you're trying to give somebody else dating advice, anybody that asks me about dating advice, I feel like I'd be so good at dating, which if my wife is listening, don't worry, not my intention, because, there's so much less risk when it's not you being involved in it. I'm sure I'm wrong. I'm sure the minute that I was no longer married after Betty hears the segment and then I wind up in the dating world, I'll make the same mistakes all my single buddies make. But every single time that it's them and not you, it's so much easier to just say, in a way that's removed of maybe the emotion or any of the things about that situation, that, yeah, obviously you need to think about it a little bit better. Humans have the ability to be introspective, according to the research. This will help with any kind of problem solving. This will help with plans for the future, something that probably a lot of us had change over the last year and probably hope to get back on track in the new year. Bad things that happen, intense negative emotions that arise, introspection can transform it from its dark cousin, rumination. Apparently, if you ruminate too much, if you think about things too much through the cone of you and having you experience them without any sort of step outside of your own life, it's going to make things really tough. To do that the opposite way, though, to try to just see it as the way anybody else is seeing it that's not you, can help quite a bit. That's when you will end up turning your thoughts into negative emotions that are cyclical if you do wind up ruminating for too long. Why does this happen? One of the scientists in this study was asked. She said there are always ways of making introspection work for us that are better. And honestly, doing it differently it's just too hard. That's probably why so many things like counseling exist the way they do, and that you're not even really friends with people if you wind up ever going to a professional for stuff like that, because you just need that outside analyst. And with us having a year that's been so much more solo, so much more alone, so much more quarantined than any other previous year, it makes us have to do this on our own. But research after research for years has been demonstrating that this might actually help with a lot of things, social anxiety, pretty much anything. Because that's the other thing I've learned over the years is that even if you feel like you went into a public space and embarrassed yourself, something that not many of us can do right now, but if you ever have, you took it way harder than anybody else did. In the moment where you did something that you think somehow made you look bad at work or wherever it is, the truth is that you're the one who's focusing on it the hardest. Even if people laughed at you, even if you did something embarrassing enough for people to laugh at it, odds are they don't care enough about you to think about it beyond that moment. And the only person who really does care about it so much is you. All right, one last thing real quick. Got to get out of here in a second, so I should do this quickly or maybe cover it more after the break. But there's a TikTok dating coach that's getting in trouble in social media. Let me say again, there's a dating coach that's exclusive to the social media platform TikTok. These are very short videos where they give advice. The piece of advice he's being blasted for is how to get a guy to stop a lady from rescheduling a date. If you're trying to go on a date and you've asked a young woman several times to go and she keeps at the last minute or maybe with very little notice rain checking or rescheduling you, he has a system to fix that problem. And his system apparently is utterly terrible and, quote, absolutely clueless, according to users of TikTok. I'll get to it in a bit. Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in for the day. Happy to be here. Actually, I'll be here for another couple days. Chad will be back in the new year. The race in Georgia is tightening. There's been a lot of conversation about the race in Georgia, about whether or not the president is impacting the way that people are voting there. Obviously, a lot of people are surprised that Democrats and Republicans are so close in a state that has traditionally voted a specific way. It's been a red state for a long time, and now it's maybe up in the air, at least as far as the Senate goes, and the two different races going on there. We have Senator Perdue weighing in on this and talking about how important it is to make sure that the right side prevails, pun intended, I guess, in this recent race.
Momentum is coming our way. People realize what's at stake here. We're the last line of defense against the Democratic onslaught and this radical socialist agenda that they've aspired to in the presidential election and continue to do so now. People in Georgia are beginning to realize how serious this is, and we won't get another chance if we don't stop it now. But the other thing is what you just said. If we gain these two seats and hold these two seats in the Republican hands, we can block what these Democrats are trying to do and protect what President Trump has accomplished over the last 4 years.
The system exists in a way to prevent one side from wielding all the power, to prevent the president from having too much influence, to prevent anyone from having too much influence. So it is a good thing, in my opinion, in a lot of people's opinions, although I guess depending on what team you're on, at times maybe not, to have a split of power, to have Republicans in control of something, as opposed to have Democrats in control of everything, because it is true that as you roll down that road, the more and more things that are controlled by just one side of our political powers, the more likely it is that they go a little or way too far as exercising that power in a negative way. Here's another reaction to the races in Georgia. This comes from Rachel Campos.
And if you look at the Georgia race in particular, it's hard to believe this is Georgia, a formerly red state that's in a, Kelly Loeffler in a tight race with basically a communist. I mean, Warnock, his church invited Fidel Castro to the church and gave him a standing ovation.
Yeah, it's also interesting the amount of people or the individuals who wind up rising to some level of power, some level of potential power in this. Democratic Georgia candidate Raphael Warnock is one of the people that's getting talked about a lot. He was the pastor of a church. He ran a church camp for a while, and actually one of the people who went to that camp when he was 12 years old, now he's 30, Anthony Washington, discussed his experience there and how horrible it was. This is called Camp Forest Out. It was a summer retreat that was supervised by Warnock at a time when he was the pastor of the Maryland church. This is all according to the Free Beacon. Washington said he was subject to, this is the individual saying that he went to the camp, subject to abuse, was prohibited from contacting his parents while he was there, was humiliated under the Senate candidate's care in ways that seem to make no sense. He's quoted as saying, "I'm like, hell no, I'm not going to go sleep outside in the cold," but he was forced to do so. This was punishment for the fact that he was wetting the bed while he was at camp. The counselors would not let him inside the house, would not let him inside the cabin at all, locked it, and left him outside in the dark with just a basketball court around him. They also said in this story that he was doused with urine. And these are all ways in which the camp counselors, not necessarily Warnock himself, but obviously being in charge of this camp, tried to stop this 12-year-old from doing something that he probably didn't have any control over. It's just surreal to hear this story, to hear the story mentioned by Rachel there about the ways in which Warnock has been certainly not necessarily a friend to a lot of the beliefs that exist in our country. And this is one of the people who may wind up winning a Senate seat in Georgia. And I know that this is an accusation. I know that this is not a proven fact. I saw this in the Daily Caller, and the Free Beacon covered it. So, whether or not details emerge to prove the accusations of Anthony Washington are still something we'll be waiting for. But just the fact that these sort of stories emerge, and certainly because of the high profileness of this race now, because the whole nation is focused on it. It's become a point where even the president, who's intent on campaigning in early January there in Georgia and talking a lot about his belief still that the election was fraudulent, that more work needs to be done to look into those claims, something that has not been proven in a court of law or proven to the American people to an extent that's valuable enough for a lot of us to get on the same page. I know people still believe what he's saying. And essentially, I've covered that before. I've discussed before how, there's essentially two sides to who you don't trust, who you don't believe in, who you think is the biggest problem currently in our country. If you're someone on the right, the biggest problem is probably a politician. If you know anybody, depending on how far on the right they are, the number one problem is a local politician that they will tell you stories about. That is the problem. The distrust of the government itself is one of the core aspects of a lot of people I know who wind up voting Republican very often, certainly people who support the current president of the United States and his position on things like drain the swamp. Then you have people on the left you talk to who usually blame other Americans as the biggest problem. They say this person or people who supported this president are just despicable, horrible, disgusting people. And that, to me, is more interesting because the enemy doesn't become a person with power per se. It becomes half of the country, half of all the people who vote. I mean, Trump got millions and millions of votes, more than any other presidential candidate other than Biden in the history of our election. And so anyone on the left that says that that's the problem is saying it to all of those people. But then we have the president still saying and still believing that the election was fraudulent, that the mail-in ballot system was tampered with or not used appropriately or certain things. I mean, there's been all kinds of court cases. It's hard to land on any one consensus opinion as far as what it is that he's actually accusing the Dominion voting system of being rigged, whatever it is. And obviously, as I said, none of it's been proven out. But he is just looking for, I guess, all avenues to be exhausted. And I say that as exaggerated as it seems he's trying to. And as he continues to speak, a lot of people on the right, a lot of publications, even the New York Post, are accusing him of putting the Georgia elections in jeopardy. They're accusing him of being the reason why the senators may lose, the Republican senators may lose in that state, because the president is saying things that motivate those who dislike him, motivate those who disagree with him to go ahead and vote to stop him. And I truly do believe that no one voted for, no one's an exaggeration I can't make. Very few people voted because they love Joe Biden, and a whole lot more people voted against Trump, more so than for any candidate. And that's why you picked the most non-candidate ever to run. You didn't pick anyone with outlandish ideas, as most of the Democratic Party has now. You picked the guy the most in the middle, as far as I guess you can be. And he's already said a lot of things, packing the court, so many things that sound like they're just going to be as far to the left as possible. He's, going to be told what to do more so than tell other people what to do as president, which is crazy. But as we go down that rabbit hole, as we discuss all the different avenues here in the election itself, which so few of us can actually vote in, you can't vote if you're not, from Georgia to begin with. So we're discussing something that not a lot of us can even impact. But I don't know how damaging it is that the president still says what he believes and that he hasn't conceded that none of that's happened. I don't know. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion, too, about potential violence when the final transition of power actually does take place. And I hope not to see violence. But if we have protesting, peaceful protesting. That's something that we've been okay with for a while. So hopefully we will continue to be okay with that and not somehow ridicule or try to tear that apart. But you never know. The talking heads will make their opinions known all the time, whether or not they intend to make them known. This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I want to get to this story, and then I got to take a break. A TikTok dating coach is being blasted online for being terrible at the job of being a dating coach. And I just want to say first that if you're a single person and you're trying to figure out the way to navigate being single and find a way to pick up a young lady or a young man and, whatever you're trying to do, going the route of TikTok dating coach as your Yoda seems to be a mistake. There seems to be a flaw in that system if that's who you're going to. But this guy, his name is Myron Gaines. He's one half of the Fresh and Fit podcast, because everyone podcasts, by the way. And he's also gained popularity for his 32-second clips. That's how long you're allowed to make a video on social media on the platform TikTok, where he talks about ways to date. He gives you advice in the world of dating. Now, he has said that it often winds up being a problem in today's world that a young man can get a girl interested, I guess, via a dating site and get conversations going, all that stuff, get to the point where you're going to actually go on a date and meet each other. And then for whatever reason, the young lady reschedules, puts you in this, keeps putting it off, keeps rain checking you sort of situation. And he's got advice for how a young man should deal with that. He said you have to punish the woman. Those are part of his advice. He said, hey, it's not really cool when a girl does that, but I'm not really a fan of flaky girls. This is me quoting this guy. If you go out, you're going to pay for drinks or dinner or whatever plans you guys had. Well, now maybe the reality sets in that you gotta punish the girl for an undesirable behavior. You got to do something like not pay for the meal that you might have intended to pay for before. Not ditch out on the check, not run away when you're out there. But if you take back some of the things that maybe you're expected to do on, say, a first date, I do also think that this advice is pretty flawed, because if this is someone that's been difficult to actually get out in the world with you, when you get them out there, if you have a bad first date, it's probably the last time you're ever going to see them. But he thinks that some of this might actually encourage the person to treat you better. It's the whole bad boy approach to dating. And man, has he been ripped apart on social media. Man, are people upset with him. But again, and I want to be as clear as I can about this, this guy is a TikTok dating coach. I don't know why people expect him to have some high standard for the advice he's giving out. He's not a professional. Not that there should be any in the world of dating. He's not a psychologist. He's not, a well-educated person in the world of any of these sort of things he's talking about. He's a dude with a podcast who knows how to operate the phone camera and post that to TikTok. That's all he is. The fact that his advice is terrible, it's almost like our society wants to attack anyone that says anything bad in the public space. Remember, if you've ever crossed somebody out in the world who's probably not doing well mentally, they're probably a little crazy, and they spout off crazy things, the person with the tinfoil hat on saying the world's about to end, we never turned a Twitter mob on these people. We never attacked and tried to unfriend or unperson individuals who say some crazy things every so often. We accepted that as a byproduct of life. And this dude, who's only famous because people follow his videos, I guess he's got dog training videos too. I doubt he has much expertise in that world either, are now mad at the advice he's given people. Because why? What expectation did you have? That's my question. I don't know what you expect of the Craig Collins version of the Chad Benson Show, but this is what it is. So hopefully you come back. I got to take a quick break. More in just a bit. Chad Benson Show, as I said. My name's Craig, filling in.
Irreverence? Yeah. So what? It's the Chad Benson Show.
It is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Happy to have you with me. Chad will be back in the new year, so I'll be on for a couple more days and thrilled to be here. Apple's longtime supplier has been accused of forcing labor in China. So yet another story about how things are not awesome in the Chinese world. I guess one of the biggest suppliers of iPhones, a factory that's existed for quite some time there, has been uncovered. Documents have been uncovered by human rights groups that exist in the area, finding that this company is less than ideal. Tech Transparency Project is the name of the the organization that has provided a lot of these details to the Washington Post about how thousands of workers in the area who are predominantly actually from the Muslim region, Xinjiang, I believe I'm saying it right, were sent to work for Lens Technology. Lens also supplies Amazon and Tesla, along with supplying products to Apple. Lens Technology is one of the five five companies that is connected to this type of human rights abuse that also winds up being a supplier in the supply chain for a company as big as Apple. Our research indicates that Apple use of forced labor in its supply chain goes far beyond what the company has ever acknowledged in public. That's according to Katie Paul, who is a director of the Tech Transparency Project. An Apple spokesman has weighed in on this, has confirmed that they use Lens Technology, but has not weighed in beyond that. He said Apple earlier this year ensured that none of its suppliers were using some of the forced labor things that might exist for some of those suppliers that they have. Apple has a zero tolerance policy for forced labor, according to them. Looking for the presence of forced labor in part of every supply chain is one thing that they do. I would say that I'm more inclined to trust the people in the project involved, the people who are researching and investigating this sort of stuff. And I guess this just, again, demonstrates some of the ways that it might not be as bad of a thing as some of us are saying if more of this work comes back to our country. Another thing that I know, even though the president has been accused of a lot of things, he's been very much on the side of bringing back jobs like this, manufacturing jobs, any kind of jobs, to our country as much as possible. And I guess we wouldn't wind up with situations where iPhones are created by people who may or may not have wanted to work in the companies they're in at all. That's not something we do here. Should actually be a headline for working here in the United States. Have you ever found anything hidden in your home? Maybe you bought a new house. Maybe you went through a construction project of some kind, and you discovered something that you didn't know was there. This happens every so often. These stories go viral. We have in front of us the top hidden in the wall items of 2020, because it can't be all bad. Some good things had to happen. You're stuck at home. You got a DIY family member who wants to do some construction on something. They knock out a wall and boom, they find some things. A homeowner was shocked that after a heavy rain, they discovered in the backyard of their home, near their pool area, I guess, that there was $20,000 hidden under it. $20,000 in cash. And see, every so often, if you just find like wads of cash, I immediately think that maybe a criminal dropped it. Maybe they were running through my backyard. Somehow it got lost at some point. I would not trust entirely the wad of cash found in dirt and debris that rolls up, although it's also probably a genius move by a criminal to drop the money in somebody's backyard and then maybe split it with them. This could all be part of the process. Another couple found 60 bottles of bootleg whiskey from their 20s built home in a secret wall. And this is the dream, man. If I were ever to find anything, especially in the year 2020, if you just went wandering through your house because, this year has been what it is, you finally find some button to a secret door in a wall that you had no idea existed. It cracks open and there's 60 bottles of bootleg whiskey in there. That is a dream come true. Nick Drummond and his partner Patrick are the ones that discovered this in Ames, New York, and they were shocked. They were thrilled. I definitely think there is more to find, they said, too. So now probably they've broken some things inside that home. A homeowner in England finds a hidden shelter under a manhole cover in the backyard. I have a lot of questions. The first one being, if you had a manhole cover in your backyard, why have you never looked into what's under there? But hidden under the manhole cover was a mysterious additional room, a shelter. And this guy by the name of Kandu Patel said that he discovered the air raid shelter and he dug out some of the other things in his backyard. Well, I guess maybe just doing some projects at home. He had no idea about it. He and his wife have lived there for 40 years and have never really unearthed those sort of things. So, I mean, out of all the different findings, and these are some of the best of the year 2020 in people's houses, I got to go with the 60 bottles of 1920s bootleg whiskey. But finding like an air shelter wouldn't be so bad. Although I know as even I talk about this on the radio, I'm encouraging people to tear apart their houses. Because anytime, especially if it was a neighbor, if it was someone in your own community that found 20 grand somewhere in their house, you'd got to be tempted. If you're sitting in your house now, as many of us are all the time, just staring at the walls, thinking like, what could be behind there? You never know, depending on when it was built. I guess the only people who don't have this problem are people who built their own houses. So I guess another pro in their corner. One last quick thing. It's just a question on social media. I'd love for you to answer it there. It's being asked a few places. When are you getting rid of the Christmas tree? Is it already out of the house? Are you keeping it until maybe things get better? If it dries out and smells bad, do you care? There are some people, younger people, that say that they're keeping the Christmas tree up as long as they possibly can in this year. So please go to our social media pages, go to the Chad Benson Show or the Craig Collins Show on Facebook. Tell us when you're getting rid of the Christmas tree. I want to know. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show.